on.
Hello and welcome, I'm Ellie Richardson and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of this hour. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said he will meet the UN nuclear watchdog chief on Monday, ahead of US-Iran nuclear talks to tackle their dispute over Tehran's nuclear program and avert conflict as US warships deploy to the Middle East. Israel's cabinet has approved further measures to tighten Israel's control over the occupied West Bank and make it easier for settlers to buy land, a move Palestinians called a de facto annexation. The Kremlin has rejected a baseless assessment by 5 European countries that Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny died from poisoning while in an Arctic prison 2 years ago. We naturally do not accept such accusations, says Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov. The mother of the deceased Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny said Monday she felt vindicated by a European assessment that her son died of poisoning. Navalny's mother has called for justice as his supporters marked 2 years since his death in prison. A Globe Artificial Intelligence Summit kicks off in New Delhi with big issues from job disruption to child safety. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurates India AI Impact Expo at Bharat Mandapam in New Delhi. According to Indonesian Army spokesperson Doni Pramono, Indonesia is preparing 1,000 troops for possible deployment to Gaza by early April as part of a proposed multinational peacekeeping force. Pramono said the final decision rests with the government, adding that a total of 8,000 Indonesian soldiers will be ready for deployment by June. Investigators have obtained a DNA sample from a glove that was found near Nancy Guthrie's Arizona home and appears to match the pair worn by a masked prowler seen in doorbell camera footage before she was abducted 2 weeks ago. China's Russian oil imports are set to climb for a third straight month to a new record high in February as independent refiners snapped up deeply discounted cargoes after India slashed purchases, according to traders and ship trafficking data. And for your top story this hour, former Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Commander Hussein Kanani Mondhamdam says that Saudi Arabia reportedly has a nuclear bomb, with the US and Israel fully aware of it. This raises serious concerns about global security, especially if Pakistan's alleged role as a nuclear pro-life rhetor is true. If these claims hold, the geopolitical landscape could shift dramatically, further escalating the risk of conflict in the region. We are now being joined by Rick Sanchez, who interviewed former IRGC Commander Hussein Kanani Mogdam. Thank you for joining us, Rick. My first question to you is, you interviewed Hussein Kanani of the IRGC, and his claim is a massive escalation. In rhetoric beyond the verbal statement, did he provide or even hint at any material evidence or intelligence dossiers that could back up the claim that Saudi Arabia has moved from nuclear interest to nuclear reality?
Yeah, his sources seem to be clear, at least as far as he's concerned. He's confident from his sourcing through Yemen and Yemenese officials that the Saudis have already garnered some kind of nuclear weaponry, which, as most have explained, comes by way of, well, money. The Saudis have more money than anybody in the world, it seems, and whatever they want, they could usually buy. And as the reporting goes, they were able to talk the Pakistani government or some Pakistani officials into sharing the technology with them. That's the story as told by him in the middle of this interview I was doing in Iran, which had nothing to do with this, by the way, and it just came up. However, I was already following that thread because I have sources in the United States who had hinted to me that that was already the case. And the reason I started looking into the story was because J.D. Vance was the first person who mentioned this when he said that the reason the United States wanted to make sure the Iranians don't have nuclear power or nuclear weaponry is because if they allow the Iranians to get it, then the Saudis will say we want it too. And that's the genesis of this whole story. It was actually a comment from J.D. Vance.
Hussein Kanani Moghadam is a veteran of the IRGC, an organisation known for its own strategic ambiguity. In your assessment, was this a genuine whistleblower moment or a calculated piece of Iranian psychological warfare designed to pressure the West into rethinking regional security?
No, I don't think it was orchestrated because it couldn't have been. He had no idea what I was going to ask him. That's not the type of journalism I do. I don't send in prepared questions. He granted me an interview. We sat down, and whatever came to my mind is what I asked him. And when I started down the line of checking on Saudi Arabia, for example, he shot back the response right away because I asked him what J.D. Vance has inferred. Do you think if you guys, referring to him, he's Iranian, if you guys have nuclear weaponry, then the Saudis are going to want it? And he said, what are you talking about? The Saudis already have it. And I said, what? He said, no, the Saudis already have it. I said, how? Why? And that's where he gave me the explanation. So the idea that somehow this was planted or orchestrated, they'd have to be pretty good to do that because there was no information that that question was coming. There were no prepared questions. They had no idea what the hell I was going to ask them.
There has long been a theory that Saudi Arabia has a turnkey agreement with Pakistan, essentially a nuclear weapon on demand contract. Did Moghadam suggest this is where the bomb came from, or is he claiming domestic production that bypassed global inspectors?
Yeah, in further discussions I had with him, my sense was his sourcing was from Yemen and the connection was through Pakistan. And where it leads to in Pakistan or specifics about that, I didn't get a chance to drill down on because I was covering a story in Iran at a time with very little internet, and I was flying by the seat of my pants, following officials, covering the story, talking to people on the streets. So the emphasis of my coverage was not Saudi Arabia and its nukes. It was more about the situation between the United States, Iran, and Israel.
If this intelligence is needed solid, it effectively ends the non-proliferation treaty era in the Middle East. Did you get the sense from your interview that Iran now feels justified in crossing the nuclear threshold themselves, citing a Saudi precedent?
Well, I think this is problematic for the whole region, especially given the escalatory level we're at right now between Iran and the United States, because the ones who are most in the thick of things here are the Gulf states. All of the states in that region, from Kuwait all the way through UAE to the Saudis, Oman. And if this thing escalates, that whole area will turn into a conflagration. And if that thing turns into a conflagration and one of those countries has to defend itself on its own right because they are not confident or want to add to whatever it is the United States is doing against Iran, and they have that type of weaponry, then yeah, there's reason to be concerned. Now, to be fair, the moment we got that response from the former Revolutionary Guard commander, who I found to be, by the way, a very approachable, honest person. I didn't think he was a BS artist, as we would say in the business. We immediately reached out to the Saudi officials, and they haven't given us a full response yet. I know there's denials out there, but I immediately went on the air and clarified that the Saudis have consistently been signatories to the non-proliferation agreement in the Middle East. So that doesn't mean that they haven't tried to acquire, have acquired, or are in the process of acquiring. I can't speak to that. I can only say that in fairness to them, they have always said that they abide by and will continue to abide by a policy where countries in that in that region of the world do not have nuclear weaponry.
Finally, we understand you've just returned from a week-long trip to Iran. What can you tell us about the situation on the ground in the country, and what were some of the more interesting things you witnessed or experienced there?
I think what I experienced most of all that I found somewhat surprising is that Iranians are no different than any of us. They're just people, and they have concerns and they have worries, and they talk to me from their hearts. I talk to mullahs, I talk to school children, I talk to moms and fathers and widows. I talk to the people who were involved in these protests. I talk to people who lost loved ones in the protests. It's a very difficult time in Iran, domestically, outside of the United States and Israel and everything else, because right now their currency is in a very, very difficult situation. Not just difficult, it's remarkably difficult. It's 1.2 million of their reals, of the Iranian real, their currency, for $1 American. Think about that. That's an inflationary level that I've never even heard of. So the currency is such in a bad state that it's causing the economy and for the people of Iran to really suffer. And that's why they're protesting. And they have a right to protest. They should be angry. And I'm not sure that, and I said this to the government. I said, you know, you guys blame everything on the United States, and yes, they may have manipulated your currency, as they've admitted to, but you're still responsible. These are your people. They're suffering, your economy. And they admitted to me. They said, yes, we are culpable as well. There are things that we need to do. I also wanted to chase the idea of how many people were actually killed and how many people have been affected who were protesters, who were castigated as a result of what they did. And I asked the government, I said, look, regardless of what their crimes may be, I know that there were some horrible things that happened here. You say they were instigated by the Mossad, maybe by the CIA. I've seen those reports as well. Regardless of what you say happened, these people all still deserve a fair trial. Can you guarantee me that they're going to get a fair trial? And they did. You know, all I can do is ask the question. So this is the underpinning of what's happening right now in that country, and it's a very difficult situation. As for the potential for a war, in my conversation with the foreign minister, who was at the time meeting with Mr. Witkoff and Mr. Kushner, my sense is that they're doing everything possible to come up with a deal that affords the level of limited enrichment that the United States is asking for, and gives Trump just a little bit more than he got from the JCPOA in his deal with Mr. Obama. And if they can come to that agreement and maybe come up with something on the ballistic missile issue, I think they might be able to work something out. Seems to me the Iranians really want this, because what the Iranians really want is for the United States to remove the sanctions. So they're desperate for the U.S. to remove sanctions. And I think they're willing to give the U.S. whatever it wants at this point. Well, let me take that back. Not whatever it wants, but something that would satisfy them, the Iranians believe. What exactly that's going to be, I don't know. But I hope to God they can work on it and make it happen, because speaking as a human being, I think this could get really ugly.
Thank you so much for joining us, Rick Sanchez. It's been a pleasure speaking with you on NewsX World. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said making a deal with Iran would be difficult due to the country's leadership by clerics, noting that Iran making policy decisions based on pure theology. Rubio made these comments during a visit to Budapest as part of a European tour. The US and Iran resumed nuclear talks earlier this month, but there's little sign of compromise. Washington seeks to broaden discussions to include Iran's missile program, while Tehran insists on sanctions relief and zero uranium enrichment. Meanwhile, tensions rise with a US military buildup in the region. Let's listen in.
Look, doing a deal with Iran is not easy. I said it yesterday, I'll repeat it again today. I mean, we have to understand that Iran ultimately is governed, and its decisions are governed by Shia clerics, radical Shia clerics, okay? These people make policy decisions on the basis of pure theology. That's how they make their decisions. So it's hard to do a deal with Iran. We've always said it's hard, but we're going to try. That's what the president is trying. I'm not going to prejudge those talks. I'm certainly not going to negotiate with Iran here in front of the press and on the stage. Our negotiators are on their way there now. They'll have meetings. We'll see what happens. We're hopeful there's a deal. The president always prefers peaceful outcomes and negotiated outcomes to things. He's a president that's shown his willingness to talk to anyone and meet with anyone. And I think if there's an opportunity here to diplomatically reach an agreement that addresses the things we're concerned about, we will be very open and welcoming to that. But I don't want to overstate it either. It's going to be hard. I mean, we're dealing, you know, it's been very difficult for anyone to do real deals with Iran because we're dealing with radical Shia clerics who are making theological decisions, not geopolitical ones. But let's see what happens. I hope it works out. We all hope it works out.
We are now being joined by Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev, who's a former diplomat who's joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. How might Iran's insistence on its nuclear rights and enrichment capabilities complicate negotiations?
Thank you for having me. I think the red lines that the United States has put in the name of negotiating with Iran are pretty tough. To name them, they don't want any enrichment activity. They want the enriched uranium to be sent out of the country. They don't want the missile to exceed a certain range, and they don't want Iran to have any tie-ups with the so-called proxies or excess of resistance in the region.
Yeah.
All these terms are difficult for Iran to accept. These have been part and parcel of their defense doctrine, and that is where the rub lies. I would not like to agree with Mr. Rubio's assertion that this is happening because Iran is run by a theocracy of Shia type. I think they have their own logic from their own perspective, and so does the United States, except that the logic on the two sides are fairly different.
Thank you. Don't go too far, as we will be coming back to you very shortly. Germany and France have initiated talks on enhancing European nuclear deterrence, with discussions between Germany Chancellor Friedrich Merz and French President Emmanuel Macron still in their early stages. A German government spokesperson clarified that these talks aim to explore deeper cooperation in nuclear deterrence, but do not seek to diminish the US's central role in NATO's defense structure. The spokesperson emphasised that the discussions are focused on supplementing and strengthening the US protective shield, ensuring that the US continues to play a crucial role in NATO's nuclear deterrence strategy in the future. We are now being joined again by Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev. Thank you for joining us back here on NewsX World. What do early stage discussions between Germany and France on nuclear deterrence signal for the future of European security cooperation?
It's an interesting question, and the situation is fast evolving as United States security doctrine is fairly ambivalent about its commitment to NATO. Now, let's remember that Europe has two nuclear weapon states, United Kingdom and France. While United Kingdom is outside European Union, it is within NATO. What is being discussed between France and Germany is European deterrence within the European Union, which leaves only France as a nuclear power. That is something that Germans might have some reservations about because don't forget, last century has seen two wars that were precipitated between Germany and France, and they got into a World War situation, and there are vivid memories of those two world wars affecting both sides. France is a smaller economy as compared to Germany, and Germany has higher exposure to the Central and Eastern Europe, where Russia is deemed as a major threat from the nuclear perspective. Now, the nuclear treaty between United States and Russia has ended earlier this month, and the new treaty is not, at least for now, being negotiated. So both sides, Russia and United States, are free to add new nuclear weapons. Russia already is supposedly the country with highest number of nuclear warheads. It's higher than United States, and United States is trying to catch up to that situation. Now, all that bringing together is a very complex and evolving picture. Paris would like to be seen as having extended its nuclear weapon umbrella to entire European Union, but the numbers do not add up. The French nuclear arsenal is far shorter than Russia or United States or even China. So that is where, once again, a reservation lies. Then again, France has been an autonomous and independent power, and it flexes its muscles sometimes within NATO in a different way as Germans would like it to do. So the coordination between the two sides is not perfect. And then you also have United States not being particularly happy with France. Mr. Trump's disdain for French President Emmanuel Macron is ill-concealed, and he keeps on needling France over wine, tariffs, and so on. And therefore, Mr. Metz, the president of the Chancellor of Germany, is trying to play it both ways while negotiating with France, but also keeping the option of greater American involvement in defending Europe against nuclear threat from Russia.
Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Pakistan and Austria have agreed to strengthen their bilateral relations in several key areas. This includes trade, investment, tourism, education, IT and healthcare. Both sides have committed to finalising memoranda of understanding on these topics. The understanding came during a delegation-level meeting between Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Austrian Chancellor Christian Stocker in Vienna. The two leaders have also co-chaired a forum of CEOs from both countries focusing on renewable energy, industrial manufacturing and other sectors. PM Shehbaz Sharif has thanked Chancellor Stocker for a successful visit and extended an invitation for an official visit to Pakistan. Moreover, the Pakistani Prime Minister has also invited Austrian businesses to the upcoming EU-Pakistan Business Forum in Islamabad to be held in April. Additionally, Sharif also reportedly planned to meet with leaders of the International Atomic Energy Agency and United Nations organisations to discuss cooperation in peaceful nuclear energy, counter-narcotics and crime control. The European Union has condemned Israel's recent approval of a process to register land in the West Bank, labelling it a new escalation. EU Foreign Affairs spokesman Anor El-Anoui emphasised that these actions are part of a broader effort to extend Israeli control in the occupied region. He reiterated that an annexation is illegal under international law, urging Israel to reverse its decision. The EU's stance signals growing concerns over rising tensions in the Middle East and calls for renewed efforts towards peace. Listen in.
Notre position, elle a toujours été très claire et consistante, dans le sens où nous avons depuis longtemps la position de ne pas reconnaître la souveraineté d'Israël sur les territoires occupés par Israël, et ce depuis juin 1967, conformément aux résolutions du Conseil de sécurité des Nations Unies. Et nous rappelons que l'annexion est illégale au regard du droit international et nous appelons.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said all AI chatbots must be held accountable after Elon Musk's Grok chatbot was found to generate non-consensual sexualized images. He explained that the government acted quickly to remove the harmful feature, stressing that the current situation is not good enough, especially when it comes to protecting children. He has promised to take a quick action with new regulations within months to address the issues around AI bots and the addictive nature of digital devices. Let's listen in to his statements on the issue.
Really clear, the status quo, things as they are now, is not good enough. Nobody can make the argument that things can be left as they are. They can't, they're not protective of children, and we intend to act. We can't have 8 years when it comes to social media and whether we ban it or massive restrictions in place. So we've taken the powers now, we're taking the powers to make sure we can act within months, not years. We also need to act very quickly, not just on the age concern, but on the devices and applications that mean the sort of auto-scrolling, the constant gluing to the machine, that you can never stop scrolling and it just encourages you, or that one thing follows from another. We have to break that habit to stop the addictive nature. We also need to do with AI bots. This is something relatively new.
That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.